randomized control trial on finance and technology. And just to introduce myself, I'm Aiko Kikawa Takenaka, and I'm an economist at the ADB, working with Takashi on some of the impact evaluation project. Let me first introduce the first presenter, Dr. Shu Tsai, Associate Professor of Jinan University, who will be presenting about microfinance RCT in China. The floor is yours, Dr. Tsai.
Thank you for joining this section, and it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm going to give a talk on the impact evaluation on a microcredit intervention led by the central government of China and to reducing poverty. Microcredit has been regarded as highly successful in finding poverty. Example would be Grameen Bank, led by Yunus and his colleagues. However, a recent symposium of 6 RCT published on AEJ Applied Economics find there's no transformative impact of microcredit on increasing income, including fundings from these 6 developing countries. And this cast stops on the role of microfinance in reducing poverty. This study, we evaluate the world's largest microcredit program, a village banking program in China, based on a randomized control trial. Different from previous RCT studies, we find substantial increases in income from both self-employment and employment activities as a result of the program. And this significantly reducing poverty and increasing expenses on durable consumptions. Our analysis suggests labor market conditions are important on determining effectiveness of microcredit on raising income. At the outline, I will first introduce the program and experimental design and lay out the empirical strategy and show the empirical estimation result. And now we are mainly focusing on the comparison across microcredit programs between different studies. And lastly, I will conducting heterogeneous analysis with data from China. As background, credit market in rural China is rather limited, and formal financial institutions is rarely accessible to the poor due to the lack of effective collateral. And financial regulations strictly restrict the development of microfinance. This renders credit rationing much more severe. For poverty reduction, the State Council leading group office of poverty alleviation and the development of the Ministry of Finance initiated a village banking program in 2006 in China. This program aims to cultivate self-managed organization in poor villages to provide local credit service sustainably. In this program, the central government deliver 150,000 yuan, or equivalent to 24,000 US dollars, to the touched villages, and the village banking program was managed by a self-selected village committee under the guidance of a county government. The program was initiated in 112 villages in 2006, and then gradually scaled up around the whole nation. So it's really a large-scale government program. The map shows the county site of this study. We have 5 provinces, and 2 counties in each province. All these are poor counties. Within each county, we have 5 candidate villages. Our researcher randomly selected 3 of the 5 villages to be treated. Essentially, the government transfer government credit. And the other 2 villages were served as control villages. So in total, we have 30 treatment villages and 20 control villages. And we evaluate average treatment impact on of all households in the treatment village. I will discuss it in more details in the empirical strategy. The program was initiated in start from so before the initiation of the program in August 2010, we conducted the baseline survey, and then right after the survey, the government start to initiate the bridge banking program in the treatment village. In January 2011, all the treatment villages starting to give out loans. After 2 years of in July 2012, we conducted the second wave of the survey and follow up all the households in the baseline survey. So as I said, we focusing on early treatment impact. So the delta Yij is a change in outcome, or here the income of household I in village J. Tj indicate the treatment status of the village. So the beta here is the parameter of interest, which indicate the average treatment impact. And we control for village baseline characteristics and allows the error term to be created within village. So in this, our main finding is that we find the program increasing self-employment income by around 2,500 yuan. And different from previous studies from Krapon et al., we also find that the income from employment income increase as well. Where in Krapon et al., they find that the income in self-employment income increase, while the employment income decrease. The rationale or the explanation is following. As injection of the credit, household using the credit to invest in agriculture productivity, which raises the labor productivity in agriculture. Therefore, labor relocate from employment activity to self-employment agriculture activity. Therefore, the self-employment income increase, whereas the employment income decrease in their studies. But here we find in China, income from both sectors increase. And I will give more explanation later about the increase in employment income, which is essentially liquidity constraint on migration. So as a result, we find the total income increase substantially, which is about 1/3 of the baseline mean in control groups. And the results are rather robust if we look at the income in terms of per capita. We also look at other outcomes. Look at the borrowing, total borrowing or access to borrow of the household increased as a result of the program. And the switch from grain crop to cash crops. The investment in animal husbandry increased as well as the revenue, although the profit doesn't increase very much in a 2 years period. There are no significant impact on small business, although there are some suggestive evidence that opening of small business outside home county is more popular as a result of the program. And we find there's more employment outside home province, whereas employment within village decreased and the total employment increased. In terms of welfare, household poverty rate in treatment wage decreased substantially, and their expenditure on consumption increases, mainly because of the increase in durable goods and housing. And their subjective well-being also increased. So why in China we find a substantial increase in total income? We compare our studies with the 6 RCTs published on AGI and another paper by Dean Cullen and his co-authors published on Science, which is conducted in Philippines, and another paper by John Kopsky and Rob Townsend in Thailand. So we do meta-analysis based on these 9 studies. So as a summary, we found that the impact on self-employment income are mostly positive in most countries. However, the impact on employment income are less conclusive. While in China and Thailand, we all find increasing in employment income, but in other countries, mostly either not significant or decreased. What are potential factors affecting the impact of microcredit on reducing poverty? The literature have raised several factors. For example, frequency of repayment so the more frequent repayment schedule may reducing the effectiveness of microcredit programs. And the high interest rate may also hurt the effectiveness of microcredit as well. The third factor have been mentioned is the saturation of financial market. If the financial market is much more less developed before the intervention, then the program is more likely to be successful on raising income. Here we highlight another factor which have been ignored or largely ignored in the literature, which is the labor market friction. So as mentioned by Gardock in his theoretical paper, if there's only one market friction, it's not enough to trap the individuals in poverty. Only when there are multiple market friction, then people will be really trapped up, being in poverty trap. So think a case of 2 factors, capital and labor. If only capital labor market is imperfect, then labor can move freely, and this can reducing the efficiency in financial market friction. If both labor and capital market is imperfect, then people can actually not able to relocate one of the other resources to mitigate the inefficiency. This is what's the case of China. So this figure shows that these dots are the program impacts in each country. And in panel A is the impact on self-employment income. As you can, the horizontal line is a kind of index for labor market friction. The higher the value, the low friction of the labor market. As you can see in panel A, first of all the points are lying above zero, indicating most of the country have positive impact on self-employment income. And the simulated line indicate this impact are independent of the labor market friction. Most interestingly, we find that the impact on employment income are decreasing with this labor market friction index. And as you can see here, China has a very low level index, which is indicating a high level of labor market friction. This leads to a higher program impact on employment income.
Dr. Tsai, you have about 2-3 minutes more left. Thank you.
Thank you. As you can see here, as total income, which replicate the pattern in the employment income. So this table is more formally test on this factor impact on program impacts by type of income. And we justify the previous claims that the program impact will decrease with repayment frequency and also decreasing with interest rate, and decreasing with saturation of financial accessibility. And finally, we find it's also decreasing with the labor market perfection. And this is mainly driven by the impact from employment income for the labor market friction reasons. And lastly, we also conduct analysis based on our Chinese data. So we do heterogeneous analysis of program impacts in China by looking at the program heterogeneity across different counties. So we grouped the county into those with high saturation of financial market versus low saturation, and look at the differences in labor market conditions. Here, panel A shows this interaction effect coincide with a cross-country comparison, where it suggests the program impacts on employment income is much higher in a county where the labor market friction is more serious. And this is also been confirmed for saturation of financial markets. As conclusion, this study systematically evaluated a large-scale government-led microcredit program using a RCT. Unlike previous studies, we find employment income increased significantly in addition to the increase in employment income. And we highlighted the labor market conditions are important for the effectiveness of microcredit interventions. Also, it's also important as regards have been mentioned in the literature about financial situation, repayment frequency, and interest rate. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tsai. Now I would like to invite the questions. If you have, please. Unfortunately, it seems like, okay, we have one question from White Tone. Please unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. I have just 2 questions. The first one is, I did not get it clearly, the transmission mechanism from the microcredit to employment income. Is it that the wages were increasing, or it was more people were employed in that regard? And secondly, in terms of measuring the impact of the program on income, how were you getting the changes in income? Was it self-reported, or there was some measure that was kind of independent to avoid some self-reporting biases? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for these 2 questions. So I apologize for this unclearness of the mechanism why microcredit affecting employment. So basically, these are all poor counties and poor households. And in a separate paper, I examined the program impacts on their migration behavior. We find access to microcredit increasing their migration outside home province, especially for those from poor villages and with less connection to migration destinations. So this indicated there are likely to be liquidity constraint in terms of migration. So in China, in Bangladesh, there are also similar findings by bus ticket subsidy, but China is a little bit different from Bangladesh. So there are a lot of working opportunities in coastal areas, and the return to migration is very high. If they can migrate, they can get much more high income than their agricultural income. The issue is that they cannot save up for the lump sum investment, a lump sum cost for migration, such as transportation cost and the living cost in the destination cities, at least for 1 or 2 months before they get in the job or get the salary from the first month. Regarding your second question, we have very detailed information about income from
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tsai. I'll take one more question from Dr. Kurosaki and move to the next presentation. Dr. Kurosaki, please unmute your microphone.
Yes, thank you very much. A very interesting study. My question is about how the repayment is going on, because in your story, you emphasize that those borrowers use the credit to go for out-migration. And you also mentioned that repayment frequency was less in the case of China. That's why this microcredit has a positive effect on income. So my question is that, is it monthly and another monthly repayment? And another question is, was there any group meeting, or is there a way for borrowers to avoid repayment, and some kind of flexibility was there? That is my question.
Yes, yes. Thank you for the Takashi, for the question. So the repayment frequency is 1 year in our Chinese case. In other studies, it's usually monthly repayment or even weekly repayment. And in China, it's usually organized in group lending. The group members share joint liability. And the repayment rate of these loans are very high, it's 98%. So the reason of this such high repayment, even though we find the impact on increasing migration, is that only part of the household member have been migrated. Not the whole household migration is not very popular in our cases, and so the left behind the members, they need to share the joint liability with other group members. And as from the field survey, we get information that they may facing the social pressure if they cannot pay the money or pay the credit in time. Thank you.
Okay.